What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. Welcome back to another edition of the Morning View. It is Friday, the 8th of November. The weekend is here. Oh, I tell you what, stuff like that does bother me. Left-hand corner, you can see it just a little crack in the screen. Oh, get that perfect. There you go. Much better. What do you call it? Yes, it is Friday. It is another day. Manchester United, we won. We won a game in Europe. First time in about a year of doing so last night, defeating PAOK at Old Trafford. 2 goals from Diallo. Gets a victory in Europe, as I mentioned, for the first time in over 365 days. What a madness. That is a complete madness. And we move on to the weekend, facing Leicester at Old Trafford in what will be Ruud van Nistelrooy's final game as the interim head coach of Manchester United. And maybe it might be Ruud van Nistelrooy's last game just involved with Manchester United in general, of course, because there is a lot of discussion about his future, whether or not he's going to stay, whether or not he's really going to be wanted by Ruben Amorim at Old Trafford as part of his backroom staff. We know that Amorim's bringing his own people from Sporting. That was part of the requirement, wasn't it? So the question is Ruud going to be involved? We're going to be chatting about that. We're also going to be chatting about Diallo, how he has to start. Surely he has to start at the weekend against Leicester at Old Trafford. And actually, what it could mean for Ahmad moving forward as part of Ruben Amorim's 3-4-3 system that he's looking to implement at Manchester United. But first, as I mentioned, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know where you're watching from in the world, what the weather's like where you are. And importantly, if people might not have seen this last night, this was a big controversy on the match view with KG myself. If you missed the match view, you might have seen it actually in the aftermath. That was also uploaded last night. You know, it's morning time here, so people might be on their way to work. They might just be waking up. They might have the day off, maybe a long weekend. Maybe where you are, it's the afternoon, it's the evening, depending on where you're watching, of course, in the world. But, you know, some people will be having their breakfast right now. And last night there was a massive controversy. And the massive controversy was, forget the game was terrible. And this is why this generated the most chat last night. It turns out that some people on their cereal in the morning, or with their cereal in the morning, have warm milk. This was very, very surprising to me. Very, very surprising. So those that are, once again, because I'm fascinated by this discussion, because the responses from both sides were so staunch of their disbelief, and I was very much in, I can't believe people have warm milk with their cereal. What do you have? Do you have cold milk or do you have warm milk? And I kind of understand the Weetabix one. That does make a bit more sense to me, and I have kind of heard of that. I was thinking about this last night. So have I heard of that? So I kind of have heard of that, I think. But like, I'm going to have some cornflakes and I'm going to have warm milk on it. What's it, you know that meme of like the person with their head and it's like, not euphoric, but just completely like, I've never heard of anything like this before in my life. So let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments if you're watching after the fact. It's a breakfast show, so why not talk a little bit about breakfast, right? That's what it should be. So yes, big up to everyone. It's already getting really involved in the chat, I can see. Daniel Luciano says, never have I ever heated up my milk. And then you get Margin there says cold milk just doesn't taste right. Like, again, I genuinely feel like once this came up last night, I feel like both sides have been doing, you know, having their usual breakfast in the morning. I don't eat cereal anymore as well, but like doing that, and no one's ever really discussed it with each other, because when it's actually been brought up, everyone's going, what, you're doing what? What? Cold? Warm? What? I think everyone's just kind of carried on doing what they're doing. So, but lots of people are saying depends on the cereal as well. So maybe. But you got Sean there says warm milk is the way. Ryan says no, cold milk on cereal. It's honestly, I feel like this. I could go on for an hour with this. I'd probably get in trouble. There'll be people going, Owen, you're not focusing again. You get distracted. But it's very interesting. And I did used to drink warm milk as a kid, but that was in the evening before you go to bed kind of thing. That was a bit different. Not on my cereal, not in the morning, right? I mean, really? So, yeah, get involved. It's a big discussion. It's a big talking point. Well, we were talking about, you know, other things this morning, but very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Show says, but if I was to eat cereal, it'd be warm milk. Cold milk on cereal is disgusting. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Very, very interesting. But that's what being part of the UV community is about, yeah? That's what being part of the UV community is about is, we're all diverse, we're all different. Yes, we're here together to talk about Manchester United, but we can talk about everything else whilst we do it. But first, we have to talk about Amad Diallo. We have to talk about Amad Diallo because Manchester United, of course, as I mentioned, won for the first time in a year in Europe last night. And Amad Diallo was the only bright spot, let's be honest, in what a game that was. Honestly, and this is what it's like kind of watching Manchester United at the moment, isn't it, guys? It's that getting through these games, and that's what it is. It's getting through some of these games. It was like it against Chelsea at the weekend. It wasn't so bad against Leicester in Ruud's mini tenure here, but watching the games, it feels like a difference between watching, enjoying, getting through. That's what it feels like at the moment, just getting through the match, because there are points of watching some of these matches where it is like, this is some of the worst football I have seen in my life. This is like the most terrible game I've seen in my life. It is so difficult to watch at points, but I guess this is the positive of already having a permanent head coach in place in Ruud van Amorim, is that you just have to go like, okay, we're getting through this. We're getting through these games. Ruud van Nistelrooy, in terms of the job that he's done in this interim period, it's literally just been to steer the ship, and thus far he's steered the ship in the right direction, i.e. don't lose games, pick up victories, pick up points. So at the moment, he can hand Ruud van Amorim, I'm still in the Carabao Cup, or we're still in the Carabao Cup. We've won in the Europa League, so as things stand, we're going through in the playoff section, for what that's worth. We didn't lose against Chelsea at Old Trafford, and hopefully he picks up a win at the weekend against Leicester. He's done as much as he really can do with what he's got at his disposal, and just gone, there you go, I can give you that. So I'll credit him certainly for that. But then as far as I mentioned, sort of the sort of tactics, but it's just the lack of attacking threat, the lack of ideas, the lack of quality technically at points is just so, again, alarming. But the bright spark, as I mentioned, was Amad Diallo last night, scoring both goals. Ruud van Nistelrooy, after the game, said he was our best player in the first half and decided the game in the second. He continued on by talking about his second goal. He said, quote, I think the second goal had everything in it. That, for me, is Amad Diallo. He fought to take the ball off the defender, then he pushed through and had the quality to bend it around the goalkeeper. That sums him up. He carried on by saying he has been incredible in training. He was never affected by not playing, always training well and staying on the training pitch saying, Ruud, let's do more. Ruud, let's do more. Because there's actually some really interesting things to pick up from some of these quotes from Ruud talking about Amad. Now, Amad spoke after the game, of course, scoring 2 goals, player of the match. Says it's an important score this season. I think I've been a bit unlucky, but I'm happy to score 2 goals. And he also said, it is the work we do in training when it comes to the pressing. I have to press the opposition team. I do my job. Do your job. When it comes to Amad, there's a couple of different really interesting things that were brought up there. Firstly, the part where Ruud talks about he's been really good in training and he's not let not playing affect him all that much. And there is this sort of weird narrative that's gone around a little bit about Amad, hasn't it? And I think it's a hangover from the Ten Hag era of this, when, let's say, Anthony would play or other people would play, and he'd get asked, oh, okay, why is Amad not playing, or why is this person not playing? And he would say, well, training performance, not necessarily in a sort of a negative way about Amad, but he'd say, oh, Anthony's been training well, or so-and-so's been training well, so they're starting. And I think it developed, maybe not intentional from Erik ten Hag at all, but it developed this kind of weird narrative that maybe Amad wasn't a good trainer, And I don't really know where that gon's kind of come from. And now you've got, Ruud come out and go, no, he trains really, really well. And some of the treatment up points of Amad this season in particular, I get it last season, he had a big injury, came back and still hadn't really played regularly for Manchester United, right? So there was still this, oh, okay, what can he offer? But then towards the end of the season, scored important goals, important performances there too, in an underperforming side. This season, he has a good pre-season. He's probably one of our standout players in pre-season. That was littered with a lot of people missing, granted, but still, he was standout in the pre-season. Wasn't he player of the month for Man United in September? And then once again, he just kind of disappeared. You know, he just kind of was. Then he was on the bench, and once again, when Ten Hag was asked about Ahmad, or why is Ahmad not playing, or why is he on the bench, and it was so-and-so's been doing well in training, which then again develops this narrative that Ahmad doesn't train very well, which it just is really, really bizarre and really strange. And last night, I remember in the pre-match when I was talking to KG, I said that, what were you do the general pre-match chit-chat, what are you expecting, who are you looking to stand out this evening? And I think rightfully so, a lot of people would have said Ahmad, and I think KG said, he'll be looking to play to send, a message to Ruben Amorim. And sometimes that's just like, there are like footballing cliches, aren't they? He's playing like he's trying to send a message or whatever it may be. But it felt like that last night. I mean, the gulf in quality between Ahmad and actually just at points the rest of the team, certainly from an attacking perspective, was so vast. And again, it's not even necessarily to say with Ahmad that it was a perfect performance from him last night as well, because he gets his 2 goals, but there are a couple of points where final pass wasn't amazing, or it was a bit like wasteful at points. But it was just the difference of someone having the want to press, not be completely wasteful 99% of the time, and then score 2 goals. And the second one's got nothing to do with anyone else. If you watch it back, I think it's Bruno tries to do like a cross-field pass or a forward pass, and it's short because everything was short in that game. Every pass, certainly from an attacker's perspective, was short in that game. And the defender's got it, and Ahmad just presses him, wins the ball back, shrugs him off, and then whips it in the corner. It's just... And it makes you think there is no way, particularly again when playing Leicester at the weekend, surely there is no way he can't start. If he doesn't start at the weekend, then I don't know. Then I don't know anymore with Ahmad. I think with the way that Ruud van Nistelrooy was talking after the game, that would probably suggest that he is going to start. I mean, I know that Ahmad came off and there was maybe a little bit of a concern about that, but Ruud said after the game he was fine. Ahmad said after the game he was fine. So I think he has to start. And actually, that sort of right-hand side was really solid, wasn't it, last night? Because obviously you had Mazraoui at right-back once more. And it's funny because in a season where it's not been great, and in a season where so much stuff has been scrutinised by Manchester United, a definite positive, and in terms of a good signing that Manchester United have made, and we talk so much about overpaying and high wages and high transfer fees, Mazraoui, in terms of a signing, so far, easily our best signing of the summer. In terms of value for money, you'd probably hold that signing up against most in the Premier League this summer as well and go, was it 12, 13 million for Nusa Mazraoui? Totally comfortable on the ball. Actually, again, I mean, maybe this is just really low standards from where we're at, but can actually pass it, can actually, not give it away and be wasteful, wins the ball back, can play both left and right side, left and right footed, can invert. I mean, that he's a top quality player. And that's why I remember when he made his debut against Fulham at the beginning of this season, like 5 minutes in, it was a couple of passes, couple of touches, and you went, oh yeah, he's way better than Wan-Bissaka. And it's not even like a slight on Wan-Bissaka. I just think that was the big discussion in the summer, wasn't it, with Wan-Bissaka? If you lose him though, you lose the defensive ability, the one-on-one, lock players up, and you go, that's great. That's not to take away from Aaron Wan-Bissaka at all. But if you are Manchester United, or if you're a top club, it should be, you would think, like a minimum requirement that, yeah, you can defend well one-on-one and what have you, but you can pass the ball, you can get forward, you can invert, you can, be calm and be somewhat press resistant as well, and you can get up and down. I feel bad for him quite a lot, actually, because I see this a lot in the game, where he'll make the overlapping run. It's not to say just because you've made the run, they have to give you the ball, but you see him make the overlapping run a lot in the game, and he doesn't get the ball. And then the work rate, just to keep going, keep doing that over and over and over again, is great. And then he gets back again, comfortable, solid, like no concerns at all. And the really interesting thing, I think, is going to be once we do get the left backs back, or that left back. I say left backs back. Once we get that left back situation sorted, actually, let's probably refer it to like that, because who knows if and when these left backs are going to come back, particularly Luke Shaw. I did see an update yesterday said Malacia was actually progressing quite well. Luke Shaw, nowhere near, basically. But when that does happen, and when we do have the sort of left back situation sorted eventually, it's going to be really, really interesting to see who does start at right back. Because now it would be Mazraoui any day over Diallo. I think Diallo's looking at points really, really shaky and really, really wasteful. And it is one of those ones that if we did have options, if we did have actual tangible fullback options, then we'd be having a totally different discussion at the moment. We'd be like, oh, yeah, Diallo's struggling a little bit. He needs to come out the side. And Mazraoui be at right back. But because we've got nothing else, then our fullbacks are our fullbacks. We've got no other options there. No other options. But yeah, the right hand side, that was the positive for me last night, was Ahmad, obviously, Mazraoui, really, really solid, playing in that position too, his actual more natural position on the right hand side. Those are the positives, and obviously the biggest positive is that we won. But in terms of a game, yeah, it was not. It was a tough one. At one point, those may have seen this actually on the match view. At one point, KG legitimately had a breakdown on the stream for about 5-10 minutes. He just erupted into laughter / tears, screaming, "I can't do this! I can't do this! I cannot do this!" He had to get his wife to get him a drink. Legitimately, tears were in his eyes. I was just sat here in silence. I thought, I don't actually know. I'm not prepared for this. I don't know what to do in that one when my co-host has a breakdown on the stream. And he recovered. He recovered. But that's what it did to him. Last night, Manchester United broke Mr. the Comedian. I mean, broke him. And yeah. It was kind of wild, but he got cheered up afterwards by Flex's tweet about expressions, so that was fine. Couple of super chats here. Bake says, replace the squad with youth players. You can keep 5 senior players. Who stays? Bloody hell. Ooh, that is an interesting one. What, and then I'm building the rest out with youth players, or I can still go into the market with it. You probably say what? Cobby you keep? Which defenders would you probably have? You probably keep like a Leacher. I think you know what the worst thing is, yeah? I'm thinking about some of the attacking players at the moment, and I'm going, I wouldn't fucking keep any of them. I wouldn't keep any of them, actually. Lenny Oro, that's right. Lenny Oro, keep him. Mazraoui. How many am I on at the moment? Am I on like 3? Because I'm looking at the attacking players and going, do you need Bruno? No. Do you need Rashford? No. Hojlund and Xerxes, do you need them? No. We can replace. We can replace that. It's just going forward, and that's also the thing last night as well. You know, looked at the midfield last night with Casemiro and Ugarte, and once again I thought they did fine. You know, I think with them it's almost knowing their limitations, isn't it? Some of the passing's not great. Some of it's okay. Some of it's not great. But it's just that sort of. There is honestly, and that's why maybe we're sort of really talking about Ahmad a lot. Obviously, he scored the 2 goals, and he he felt like so much more fresh compared to the rest of the team last night. But it's so non-existent in terms of the build-up play or the attack threat or the final decision. Last night, again, you're looking at Rasmus Hojlund in the first half. I don't know. I don't have the stat in front of me. Maybe someone wants to do that. Let me know in the chat. I don't know how many times he would have touched the ball. Maybe once or twice. Because I saw at one point he tried to do like that sort of Rasmus turn that he does. I think to try and wake himself up because maybe he had fallen asleep in the game. It was that bad. But didn't really touch the ball all that much. Started wrestling with people once more. Garnacho, he really just carried on from the weekend, didn't he? In terms of the final decision, more often than not last night, I think the final decision from Garnacho was wrong. And it's getting into that territory now where it is getting a bit boring, isn't it? Because I think we've had the same conversation about Garnacho for maybe the last 4 or 5 days since the weekend. But the way I just kind of look at it is just that it's a bit like we were talking about with the fullbacks earlier on. I think that he shouldn't be at this stage in his career as relied on as much as he is. And if anything, I think it's the poor sins of the past, the poor recruitment and the poor makeup of the squad that is almost hurting Garnacho at the moment. Because if we some of our sort of wide signings like Anthony, like Sancho, whoever had worked, then Alejandro Garnacho would still be in that situation where starts some games, comes off the bench in others, impact player, but he's developing and he's getting better. Because our options are limited and because of poor recruitment and the poor makeup of the squad, we're like, well, Alejandro Garnacho's got to start all of these games. And I don't think he's at that point yet. I don't want to be one of those people that just, he's never going to be good. Oh no, I think we have a real risk with him and it's a concern I have with people like with Kobe as well, and with other young players that they show a little bit of potential, and we're so desperate for stars. We're so desperate for stars, and we're so desperate for quality players that if they just showed this the smallest amount, then it's just all on them. It's just all on them, and that's it. And then when they do have an inconsistent period, which they will because they're young players, then we go, oh, they're rubbish. They're never going to make it. And then it's like, well, if we take that attitude, then they never will. Then they're not going to make it because we're basically saying you have to be perfect all the time. And I know that you could say, oh, and that's lowering standards, but it's not, because it's always been like that. But in the past, with other older United teams, there were so many quality senior players ahead of them that it was so much easier to integrate young players into the team. Now, it's really difficult to integrate young players into Manchester United because most of our players are shit. So we get so desperate. We see Garnacho do an overhead kick, or we see Kobe play so great that he goes into the England squad and he's playing at the Euros. And then when inevitably there's a drop-off, we start going, oh, maybe I've second-guessed. Maybe I've got this wrong. Because again, we're so scarred as Man United fans of this kind of imposter syndrome that any player's any good. You know what I mean? So I feel like with Garnacho, I do think some of the criticism is valid because you can't put stinkers in and have poor performances and people not say that needs to be better, or your decision making needs to be better, or it needs to be this, it needs to be that. But I feel he's in a really difficult position because we've just got nothing else. We've got nothing else. And maybe at the weekend, he should. I don't think he should start. It should be Ahmad on the right and Rashford on the left and go with that. But inevitably in that game, Garnacho will have to come on because the front line is still really, really inconsistent. And that's just kind of like where it is, I think, with Alejandro Garnacho. Red Baron says, Maz will eventually be poisoned by the team. Oh, I hope not. It hasn't thus far. I hope not. Show says, it's not scarred, Owen. Strikers need at least basic fundamentals and at least have the foundation to succeed. Hojlund doesn't. I wasn't talking about Hojlund. I was talking about Garnacho. If you want to talk about Rasmus Hojlund, as I mentioned, I've said before, my thing with Hojlund is that I do have more concerns about his ceiling and how far he can go. I still don't know by watching him what kind of a striker he is, and look, sometimes and this is what it is at the moment. It's just kind of hope, but my hope is that Ruud van Nistelrooy comes in and we've seen Gyökeres midweek, and he was at Coventry, and wasn't he previously at Brighton, and get sold for $1 million. I think someone brought this up when it came to Gyökeres as well. That so wasn't he? How do you spell his name again? Sporting. That I think he was. He was at Brighton previously, and he was at Brighton previously from 2018 to 2021, and the person that sold him was Dan Ashworth. So I wonder what that conversation would look like. I suppose it depends. You could look at it as He knows him, so there's an in there. Ruben Amorim knows him. Dan Ashworth knows him. So in terms of making the contact, that would be good. But I don't know what the relationship would kind of be in the sense of, well, when I was at Brighton, that kind of hierarchy necessarily didn't kind of believe in me, and now I'm doing great. That's quite interesting, isn't it? But I suppose you never know. Amorim might come in and Rasmus Hojlund might adapt, and he might become a Gyökeres-esque player. The one thing I did see watching the game on Tuesday was that the desire from the number 9 in Ruben Amorim's system to run the channels, run in behind. I thought, well, that's only of the people that we've got at the moment. That's only Hojlund that could maybe do that, and I don't know if he could do that to the level that Gyökeres could do. Now he is still younger and he could still develop, but I think there is a reason. I think there is a reason that we're being linked to Gyökeres, not just because of the Ruben Amorim links. I saw Florian Plettenberg, I think it was yesterday or the day before, going that United are looking at striking options in January and looking at possibly looking next summer. And I think there's a reason for that. I mean, and once again, this one I go back to recruitment. I go back to the recruitment of United, because when we signed Rasmus Hojlund, he was meant to be the backup to a more senior striker, and it's just a striker that we never bought. So once again, we're into the territory of, are we expecting things or over-relying on people that actually at this stage of their career just can't deliver that anyway? And we're getting almost what you expect. But the issue then becomes with Rasmus Hojlund is because we paid that amount of money, then it's like, and because he's been at the club longer than our other striker, Joshua Zirkzee, it's like, okay, I guess then he's the starting striker. But as many people would point out, and again, this goes back to how bad Manchester United's recruitment was, even recently as just a year or so ago, is that how much is the final price we paid for Rasmus Hojlund? Wasn't it like 60+ million pounds something? And you're going, and actually, looking back on not this past summer, but the summers before's transfer window, you're looking at, you signed Mason Mount, 55 to 60 million pounds, barely played, always injured. He was on the bench last night, but came on, but he's miles off it, and you're just waiting for him to get injured again. You're looking at Rasmus Hojlund. You signed him for, what was it again, 60 plus? I think it was like 72. Someone says in the chat, something like that. And you're going, I mean, yeah, who knows what he could maybe turn into? But again, where we are right now, like, is that looking like value for money, or can we see that could become value for money? That still seems ridiculously high, doesn't it? You've got Andre Onana in goal, which, to be fair, he's been one of our better players this season. But still, you're going about, how much was Andre Onana? It was like 50s, wasn't it? Around 50 million quid. Yeah. Like that transfer window, in retrospect, actually stinks. And the overpaying and not really giving us what we need, what we needed at that time as well, is really, really bad. At least with this past summer's window, you do see people that can come in and contribute right away. We kind of getting them where they need to be, like Matthijs de Ligt, like Mazraoui. You go, well, okay, right, they make a bit more sense. The Ledi Yoro one, I do think that will pay off long term. But yeah, it's just some of the that's why I'm glad those people are gone. John Murto, Richard Arnold, in terms of their ability to operate in the transfer market, it's just it's mad. It's absolutely mad. A couple of super chats here. Makish has been... I should Red Baron first. Says, research Amorim's tactics. Hojlund will benefit. Makish says, has been over for 13 months. Says, Hojlund gets the least service in the league. Do you not think that's an issue? Build-up play is so erratic. Always receives balls in a strange moment. I think this kind of... I think this kind of gets a bit lost when in the criticism of Rasmus Hojlund. I don't think many people are disputing that the service to him is not good. I think that's the part of it. I don't think anyone's. I don't think it's like, they're going, oh yeah, he's not getting service, that's why he's shit. I think, well, maybe this is probably easier for me this is how I think. It's not the sense of, it's because he's not getting anything, that's why he's rubbish. And I don't think he's terrible or anything like that. I'm just sort of, my more concern is a bit more longer term with him. So I'm going, right, I understand he's not getting a lot of service. I understand all that kind of stuff. I'm just thinking about how far actually could he go? And could I see him being like the leading starting striker in the future that scores 25, 30 goals, that kind of thing? And look, and you don't know. You really don't know. We have some players that can be a bit slow to start, and then one season they kick in under the right coach, in the right tactics or whatever, they can kick on. I just, after now seeing him for about over a year or so now, I just sort of go, I feel like he needs. Again, it's a bit like the Garnacho one. I still think we need a striker now. We need a more ready-made striker now, and I don't think he benefits from being the Manchester United leading striker at the moment, right? But yeah, I think that's where it is. I just think we need more now, and I think that's why in January or even next summer, I think United will look for more ready-made at the moment. That's just kind of how I see it. Joe says, not sure Hojlund was brought as a backup, to be fair. Well, I disagree, Joe, because the reports all at the time, the suggestion is, because remember, the original quoted price, or not quoted, the original price that Manchester United thought they were going to sign Rasmus Hojlund for was around £40 million. That's what they thought, or 40 million euros, whatever it may be. And the suggestion was that it was going to be signing two strikers that summer. It was going to be signing Hojlund and, I don't know if it was Harry Kane, but I don't think that was ever possible. But it was like another striker, and the price escalated because there was always considered a young striker that would be in addition to another one. Because and then to be fair, that does make sense. That's how I view Hojlund at the moment. That's how I view him, is that he would benefit so much from having another senior striker either in front of him or someone that could, interchange. I think that that's what he needs. That's what he needs quite desperately. Because I just don't. I think it is the lack of service thing, and because of that, he's going to struggle to develop. And I do think there's potential there. Make no mistake here. This is when it goes back to the criticism means you hate them. I do think there's potential there, because I was beating the drum of Hojlund last season when he went on that run of scoring goals and broke that record, and you could see confidence in him, and you go, okay, right. The fact that was the youngest player to score in that many consecutive games, youngest United player to score in that many consecutive games in the Premier League, and he scored a lot in the Champions League in that really dreadful campaign. There's something there. It's not to say that there's nothing there and he's no good, because that's the other part of it now, isn't it? Whenever you criticise anyone, that means you're writing them off. You're saying they've got nothing to offer. Rasmus Hojlund does have something to offer, but I feel like from a striking perspective, we would need more, and I think he's going to be inconsistent as well. That's also the problem. You look at that front line; it's just full of inconsistency. Some of it should be what is expected because they're young players. Some of it with the more senior players like Bruno or Rashford, that's just where they kind of are, isn't it? So I feel like we need more. So when it comes to Hojlund, I think that it's not to say that he's written off, or it's not to say that he's not going to succeed or anything like that, because All Elite says we're raving about Gyökeres, but what was he doing at 21? Hojlund has a lot of qualities that's worth investing in. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying get rid of Rasmus Hojlund at the end of the season. He's got nothing to offer. But as you mentioned there, how old's Gyökeres? Is he 26, 27? Let's say with Rasmus Hojlund, it takes 3 or 4 more years, or let's say it takes 2 or 3 seasons for him to really start to get into his, him scoring 25 or 30 goals. Can Manchester United then, if we're saying that's going to be the case, can Manchester United then afford to wait 2 or 3 seasons with no real other goal scorers in the team? So it's not to say that we need to get another striker in because we're getting rid of Rasmus Hojlund. It's saying, okay, well, whilst he's developing, we can't just sit and do nothing. We can, and just continue not to score goals. We need to find goals somewhere. This team needs to score goals to actually win games and be successful, right? So that's why I'm saying get a senior striker, find a senior striker, take the pressure off them and allow them to develop. And that goes the same with the wide players too. And once again, I go back to, and it's everything always circles back to recruitment at Manchester United, isn't it? Everything circles back to recruitment. The recruitment of Manchester United has put such a strain on the team and put such a strain on the club because, you look at the wide players again. We'd be going into another transfer window in either January or in the summer, and we'd be looking at probably another striker and possibly a wide player or two. How much money over the last however many transfer windows have we spent on strikers and wide players to still end up with a lack of options and needing more? That is wild. We'd be going into another transfer window. Last summer it was like, we need a striker, we got Hojlund. This summer it was like, we need a striker, we got Xerxes. And then we'd be going into another transfer window going, I think we actually kind of need a striker, or we need another striker, or we need another wide player, or what's the answer to the left-hand side or the right-hand side? And it goes back to recruitment, because it's been terrible. So because of that, we put younger players that will be inconsistent under a lot of pressure and strain, and then when they are inconsistent, we blame them for it. It's difficult. So it's not to say that Hojlund he's never going to be good or he's not going to succeed in the future. I do wonder about how high his ceiling is or how far he can go, but I just think while we kind of figured that out, United we can't just basically sit on our hands and go, well, it's going to work out eventually with him, so we'll just kind of do nothing. It's like, well, we've got to do something whilst that's kind of developing at the same time as well, I think, anyway. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. We've got close to 1,000 people watching. We're currently at 247 likes. So if you haven't already, click the like button and be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. Zayn with a super chat says, I think the midfield is the problem. Why we play two DMs in the midfield instead of someone more creative, and the senior players need to improve. The senior players definitely do need to improve. Again, that's also part of the problem too, isn't it? Is that it's like last season with Kobe, and it'll be the case when he does come back. Like Kobe Mainoo is one of the first names on the team sheet, and you think about how many midfielders we did have and do have. The fact that he's like just again suddenly straight in first name on the team sheet, again, that's so concerning because we're so the senior players don't stand up and deliver. You look at Bruno Fernandes or you look at Marcus Rashford and the inconsistency there and the drop off there, it's mad. But I do also get why they play two defensive midfielders, or certainly why Ruud is doing it at the moment, because when we don't, literally the midfield's wide open and we can lose against anyone. So that's what I go back to. I think actually Ruud's done actually a good job in this interim period because all he could do is steer the ship, and sometimes that's just literally just grind out results, and do your best, do what you can. Basically, that's it. Speaking of which, Ruud van Nistelrooy, will he stay at Manchester United? Well, he's certainly been very vocal, hasn't he? That's what he wants. He wants to stay at Manchester United. He wants to contribute and he wants to be a part of things. Now, he spoke about what he said to the players before last night's game. He said, quote, I said to the lads before the game that was a year ago since the last European win at Old Trafford. We couldn't believe it. Fans could. It was time to turn it around, build and change. It is a big period at the club. He also, this was certainly spoken about quite a bit, actually, wasn't it? About Andre Onana. And there had been actually reports, I don't know if you guys kind of saw these, talking about how the players liked Ruud and they wanted Ruud to stay at Manchester United, and they hoped that he was going to be a part of Ruben Amorim's plans and going to be a part of his system and what have you. So Andre Onana was asked after the game, and it kind of again lines up with the reporting really. He said, Andre Onana asked if he wants Ruud van Nistelrooy to stay. He said, quote, 100%. He's a very good guy, a very good coach, and he expects a lot. But at the end of the day, it's not something we can decide because the club makes the decision. Now, one or two in the chat, I say, one or two in the chat, if you would want Ruud to stay. One for yes, two for no, if you would want Ruud van Nistelrooy to stay. I got asked the same question by KG last night about this, if I wanted Ruud van Nistelrooy to stay. And I'm at the part at this point with everything that's happened with United and what have you, and I can see that I can see it's a bit mixed. I can see a bit mixed. Maybe more towards no. More towards no would probably be the sort of fair sample size there. If it was me, I'd lean towards no. And I'll tell you why. I think that it should be Ruben Amorim's choice, Ruben Amorim's decision. If Ruben Amorim doesn't want Ruud van Nistelrooy there, and again, not necessarily a reflection on, he's a bad guy or he's a bad coach or anything like that. But I feel like with the new structure, with the way that it is, and Ruben Amorim's not as involved in maybe like the recruitment side of things as Erik ten Hag was and what have you, then his job is there. He is there to coach. He is the head coach. He's there to coach the first team and get the best out of them. Now, therefore, Ruben Amorim should be backed and should be given all of the tools he needs and he wants to get the best out of that team. And if Ruben Amorim is like, right, my thing is I want to take that backroom staff that I have at Sporting and I want to bring that to United, and that's what's allowed me to be successful at Sporting, and I'm bringing that. And you go, okay, and you go, is Ruud van Nistelrooy part of your plans? He goes, no offense, but just this is how I've always worked. I always bring my guys. I've been with my guys, as he mentioned before, for a long time. That's just how I kind of operate. And if that was the case, you'd go, all right, cool. And I know that, Andre Onana there saying about Ruud van Nistelrooy, he's a nice guy, and some saying he's a good coach and what have you. But this is football here. It's not about being nice, is it? It's about delivering. And Manchester United have been awful this season. And if he's not a part of Ruben Amorim's plans, then he should go. And it was, I think he said in the press conference, didn't he, before the Chelsea game, about Ruud and taking this step in his career. I think he said he would only become an assistant at United. And clearly, again, he's very keen to stay and very keen to help. And maybe there might be another role for him outside of the first team that he might be interested in, whether he'd want to become an academy coach or manager again at this stage. Probably not. He's already been a manager or a head coach of PSV. I just think with everything that's happened this season, I think that, it should just be, again, Ruben Amorim's choice. Who does Ruben Amorim want there? If he wants none of that backroom stuff, then they should all go. If he does want to keep some people in, then keep him in. But I think it should be totally up for him. The first team, that is his remit. That is totally his remit. Yes, he's going to be dictated to somewhat about certain things. We're working hand in hand with the sporting director and the technical director and all that kind of stuff. But the makeup of his backroom staff should be up to him. And if it doesn't, and if that makeup doesn't consist of Ruud van Nistelrooy, then that's unfortunate. What you can say about Ruud is, as I mentioned, at a time which it was so bad, performances haven't really got all that much better, do they? But I think what he has done is just, again, steered the ship. That's all he's been able to do. Steer the ship and give and make sure that it's still operating and functioning when he hands it over to Ruben Amorim, which is what he's done thus far. We're still in the Carabao Cup. We didn't lose against Chelsea at home. We won a game in the Europa League. Hopefully he wins against Leicester at the weekend and go, right, there you go. Because let's face it, Ruben Amorim's got a lot to do anyway. I think a lot of people, myself included, last night, I don't know about you, watching that game was not an eye-opener because we know how bad it is, but there were certain points last night where, however you watched it, you saw me on the match field, I'm sitting back here in my chair and I'm thinking, bloody hell, Ruben Amorim, what are you going to do with this? How are you going to fix this? How are you going to get some of these players to be able to pass the fucking ball? What are you going to? How are you going to get these attacking players to actually be quite sharp and attacking? How is that going to work out? How is that going to operate? And so he's got a lot on his plate there, So yeah, I thought with all that, just as long as we get results, then he doesn't have to necessarily worry too much. or over worry about some other things, because my word. Adrian says, I disagree, Owen. The club should have a structure of staff regardless of head coach. If it doesn't work out with Ruben, we have to buy a whole new backroom again to replace his guys. I totally disagree, Adrian. I think that if we basically went, our backroom staff is our backroom staff, Ruben Amorim, you're just coming in, then I don't think that would work. I don't think that would work. I think if you're the head coach and, Man United are going to Ruben Amorim and they say, oh, right, we really like what you're doing at Sporting. How are you doing it? And he goes, well, it's me and my coaching staff. That's how we operate. Then if Man United said, literally, we're just going to pick, no, we only want you, not your backroom staff, I think he'd be right to turn the job down. Well, I'm not going to succeed then. I've got to work with people I've never worked with before in terms of a backroom, who might not even like me. It's trust, isn't it? It's trust, and it's being on a united front, isn't it? And I know that's one of those things that maybe doesn't totally go sort of translate from work to work in actual business world, right? In the business world, if you get a manager's job, you go in, you don't know any of the people you're working with or your subordinates and what have you. But in football, it is a bit different. And I think that would be really, really risky. And also, what kind of sure-footing ground would he be on with that? Oh, we'll just get rid of you and bring someone else in. It's literally, and also as well, this is really not a revelatory process. Like, that's how it works, isn't it? You get a coach, they bring in their backroom staff. I can't recall many a times at all that you would just go, manager comes in, I don't want any of the people I worked with before. And, the backroom staff, I don't want that at all. Yeah, I mean, and I get if it was a really successful one. I mean, if it was, people look at the Sir Alex thing, don't they, in 2013 with David Moyes when he brought in all of his people. You could suppose, rightfully so, say, look, the best thing you could have done there is change nothing, essentially, and you might have been successful. But we're not there, are we, at the moment? It's not like, well, there's nothing to change here because it's all working so great. And again, we've gone to Sporting, we've gone to Ruben Amorim, said we want all this, we want all that, let's give us that, and we go, and he's like, well, to deliver that I need this and this, and we go, no, we can't have that, you can't have your backroom staff. Then he turned it down. Like I said, it's one of the requirements of coming over. It would have to be. Super chat here from Adam says, those players haven't earned the right to have a say off if the coach stays or goes. They play for the club doesn't play for them. I mean, it's largely irrelevant, isn't it? And I don't think that Ineos will be taking, I don't think any notice, really. Or what does the players want? By the way, Ruben, because let's face it, if Ruben Amorim has got this deal with United, he's bringing in his backroom staff, and just before he comes in, he got a word from Ineos. Oh, by the way, you've got to keep Ruud. Why? Players want him to stay. I'd be like, is this what I'm really dealing with? I'd be getting back up the phone to talk to Sporting again. Because if that is that the culture that's being allowed at this club, basically, is the players dictate. And I'd do the opposite just to piss them off, frankly, at this point. I don't care what you want. you haven't really given us anything, have you, over the last however many periods of time. So yeah, don't and he takes that, don't care. you want Ruud to stay, don't care. So I don't think, actually, to be honest, it's like a massive, huge issue. I think it's quite obvious. Ruud van Nistelrooy, I don't think is going to stay. I think Ruben Amorim just want to bring in his own people. Ruud will go back to coaching. I saw Paul Scholes saying this post-match last night, and I do think he's kind of right, is it always felt, and I don't know if you guys agree with me or not here, but it always felt a bit weird with Ruud when he was on the touchline with Erik ten Hag, because obviously Ruud has managed, and I don't know, it just felt a bit awkward that it was a bit like he feels like a manager. This is kind of what Paul Scholes was sort of saying last night, is you see him on the touchline last night, and even when he was part of the backroom staff, is he feels like a head coach / manager. And when he was part of the backroom team, you go, it feels a bit, I don't know, it just like it doesn't really, not doesn't work, but just doesn't kind of feel right. You don't really get that with like Rennie Harker, who was, again, also, he was a manager coming from, was it Go Ahead Eagles? You don't get any feeling of, oh yeah, no, he's manager. No, he feels like a member of the backroom staff. And maybe it's just because we know Ruud van Nistelrooy and he's a striker and he's a legend and all that. But it just, I don't know, I can't really describe it. I'm not articulating myself very well with this one. But it just felt a bit weird with him being on the backroom staff and him being there. And when you see him last night, and he's got the the turtleneck on and the big coat, and you go, oh, that feels a bit more right for him. He does feel like a manager. He does have that kind of presence and that aura. It's just, yeah, I just don't think it just didn't work. It just didn't really feel right, really. So yeah, I think Ruud goes, and I think that'll be the best thing for him, and hopefully he can continue his career. I would like to see him carry on managing in England. He was linked to the Burnley job before he became assistant manager in the summer, so perhaps he would get another job in England or something like that. Perhaps that might happen. So there you go. A reminder though, by the way, guys, that it's going to be the Trinity later today, powered not by anyone anymore, not by Dan Gore. 2024 on the floor. It's not powered by anyone anymore, Dan Gore. So that'll be later on. That'll be at 6 p.m. Flex, KG, that comedian, and myself. So be sure to join us then. Siren in the chat. We nearly didn't have a whole show with one. That would have been surprising, wouldn't it? So siren in the chat to end the show. That's the siren to know to end the show at the right time. So if you haven't already clicked the like button, we're close. We're one away from 300. If you haven't already clicked the like button, let's see if we can get to 350, 400, something like that on the way out. As I said, Trinity later on. We'll be getting into previews for the game this weekend as well. That'll probably be tomorrow. And then, of course, Sunday is match day. Is it televised, by the way? Does anyone know if that's televised? Man United versus Leicester. Is it on TV? The game will not be broadcast in the UK. It's one of those ones. Oh, it's going to be fun, isn't it? It's always fun whenever it's like that. Bloody hell. So, yes, we'll be live match day. I'll be live 2 hours before kickoff. As per the usual, it'll be KG, that comedian, a very hungover KG, as he said, on Sunday. So you want to tune in for that. And I'm sure we'll have more dynamite conversation about stuff like, again, cereals and I don't know, anything else really that happens. That's what kind of watching United's like at the moment, isn't it? It's so much fun. Anyway, guys, as I mentioned, we'll be back later on for the Trinity. Have a good Friday, and we'll see you all again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.